So good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all of you. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's a very special day for the founding partners of the Innovative Finance for the Amazon, Cerrado and Chaco initiative. We call it the IFACC initiative. So we are TFA, UNEP Climate Finance Unit and TNC, but also an important day for the signatories of the initiative. My name is Danielle Carreira and I'm the head of finance sector engagement at the Tropical Forest Alliance. I think before we start, some housekeeping rules, as you can see in the screen, but the event has simultaneous translation to Portuguese and Spanish. So please click at the globe at the bottom of your screen for translation. The webinar will be recorded, and for questions, please use the Q&A function. We will aim to answer as many questions as we can during the discussion, but if time doesn't allow, we will address your comments or questions by email afterwards. So I think it's really important before we start our discussion to explain what is the initiative and why it was created. As I mentioned, it was created by three organizations: the Nature Conservancy, which has been actively engaged in Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay, working with local stakeholders on the development of solutions for sustainable cattle and soy production. TNC work on IFACC has been led by Greg Fishbein and Anna Horta. They have an amazing team behind them. UNEP Climate Finance Unit, led by Eva Mulder, but again, working very closely with other units in a big team, including UNEP-FI and the World Conservation Monitoring Center. UNEP Climate Finance Unit team are the lead environmental advisors to impact investment mechanisms at the global level. And we at TFA, we are a multi-stakeholder initiative hosted by the World Economic Forum, and we work with governments, private sector, and civil society to consolidate high-impact partnerships focused on reducing deforestation and creating a positive future for forests. Why the initiative was created, I think is really important to highlight. As by reducing deforestation and further land conversion, we will be addressing three major challenges that we as a society are facing, which is climate change, biodiversity loss, and food security. Investors, banks, companies that have committed to a net zero target cannot do so if they don't address deforestation and land conversion linked to commodity production. There are several elements involved in achieving such a goal, but the development of new financial products that enable the expansion of agricultural production is a big and very important part of the puzzle. To achieve our goal, we believe, and we have been told by several stakeholders, that the creation of an initiative that brings all the actors in the supply chain was much needed. And here, I would like to be clear that supply chain actors include producers, financial institutions, companies, and very importantly, providers of catalytic capital. So that's what we have done. And as partners, we have since launch been supporting the signatories on a bilateral basis, on a collective basis, by providing market intelligence and advice on environmental management and facilitating key relationships. The initiative was launched at COP26, and collectively, the 9 existing signatories committed to over 3.5 billion to expand the flow of capital toward sustainable production in these three biomes. Implementation of the commitment is key, and our key objective this year is the disbursement of 200 million. So today, what we'd like is to share some of the success we have already achieved, but also highlight some of the challenges that we have encountered. In addition, we are also launching the IFACC synthesis paper and the IFACC Knowledge Hub. On that note, I would like to share a short video with you prior to our panel discussion. So I hope you enjoyed the video. There are a few more to come with key messages and data from the IFACC synthesis paper. As you have seen in the video, we are not trying to create anything impossible here. There is a 30 billion investment opportunity, meaning that there is enough degraded land to expand production. It's not a case of conservation versus economic development. They can be achieved together. Proven business models are available, and here I'd like to bring an experience that we had a few weeks ago. TNC organized a fantastic field trip to us partners and signatories of the initiative to Mato Grosso, a large state in the west central Brazil, mostly covered with the Amazon rainforest, wetlands, and savanna plains. So we had a chance to visit the Cerrado and the Amazon biomes. During the trip, we not only had a chance to see all the natural beauty in these regions, but we also met with several producers and other key stakeholders in Brazil. I've seen with my eyes some amazing production systems, and I've heard with my ears that there are so many people out there that want to be part of this transition of the agricultural sector. What we need now is to work together and scale what is already out there. And we hope this webinar today will inspire you and will convince you to join our journey. With no more from me, I would like to hand the floor to Justin Adams. Justin used to be the executive director at TFA and has also contributed hugely to our success story. Justin, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny, and it's great to hear of the progress that IFACC has made. I think it's such a groundbreaking initiative that brings so many different organizations together and so many individuals working to try and advance these critical goals, as you said, to balance how we're going to produce food, and food security has never been higher on the international agenda than it is right now, as well as how we are also going to continue to protect the forests for the climate challenge we face, as well as the biodiversity challenges we face. And so I think this is a really, really critical time to take stock. And we've got a great set of panelists who are going to sort of bring some of the existing initiatives and some of the new initiatives to life in a moment. But before we get to that, it's really a great pleasure to introduce Teia Fava, who's going to make some opening remarks. And Teia, you could introduce yourself, but it's so rare that we hear from the actual producers of the reality on the ground and all that you do to balance the production of food, the support to local communities and the local economy, and the protection of the environment. And so we're really excited you could join us today. So thank you, and I hand over to you.
Bom dia a todos, meu nome é Teia Fava, eu sou produtora rural no estado do Mato Grosso, aqui no Brasil. Além de diretora da Associação dos Criadores do Mato Grosso, a Agrimate, eu também sou membro do Conselho Consultivo de Produtores do IFACC. Atualmente, eu trabalho com pecuária e produção de eucalipto. Minha propriedade está inserida, como mostrou ali no mapa, no bioma cerrado, e possui entre 45% a 50% da sua área em vegetação nativa. Está bem acima dos 35% exigidos pelo Código Florestal Brasileiro. Acredito que a produção sustentável é uma meta para a grande maioria dos produtores brasileiros, de nós produtores, né? Para modelos mais eficientes e positivos para a natureza, normalmente exige um grande aporte de recursos, como investimentos em maquinário, capacitação técnica e infraestrutura. São raros os casos em que um produtor está disposto ou pode assumir todo esse risco dessa transição sozinho. E é por isso que vejo o IFACC como uma iniciativa tão importante. O IFACC pode articular e ampliar a criação de novos mecanismos financeiros que viabilizem a transição produtiva, tão essencial para o nosso mercado, o mercado de commodities agrícola brasileiro. Existe muita demanda para esse tipo de produto financeiro, afinal, todo produtor rural almeja intensificar a produção, garantir maior rendimento por hectare e acessar mercados que pagam um valor diferenciado por saberem que aquilo que estão comprando foi produzido de acordo com as melhores práticas e ambientais e respeitando a legislação vigente. Além disso, o acesso ao mercado passa a ser um tema estratégico para qualquer pessoa envolvida no agribusiness. Tudo indica que, num futuro bem próximo, o nível de rigor irá aumentar para exportação ao mercado europeu, norte-americano e chinês. Sendo assim, quem se antecipar a essa demanda estará muito bem posicionado quando esse momento chegar. Porém, para que essa transição ocorra efetivamente, os produtores precisam do apoio das instituições financeiras. Só por meio de mecanismos financeiros diferenciados, com maiores prazos de carência e taxas mais baixas de financiamento, nós conseguiremos dar esse salto necessário. O benefício no futuro será coletivo, tenho certeza disso. E da mesma forma, o esforço hoje em dia também precisa ser coletivo. Muito obrigada por poder estar aqui nesse momento, representando os produtores do Brasil. É uma grande honra estar entre vocês.
Thank you, Teia. Muito obrigado. And I think just really important to emphasize, just you talked on your own farm, 45 to 50% of the land is still in native vegetation. I would hesitate to find a farm in Europe or North America that comes anywhere close to that amount of native vegetation. And at the same time, you're producing beef, or you're producing cattle and eucalyptus on the land. And I think that really highlights this dilemma. And if we want, the thing you are also saying, and said it so clearly, if we want to encourage more producers to do the same, we have to find finance mechanisms to support that transition and move away from a business as usual, so more people are replicating the very good practice that you are, or best practice that you are demonstrating. So thank you again for your leadership. And I would encourage, we've got lots and lots of participants. I'm going to encourage you to ask questions and think about questions that you can ask Teia. Many of you won't have the chance to join a field trip that Danny just described, but here's a chance to ask a producer what the reality is on the ground. What are some of the issues that the farmers are struggling with? So please use that Q&A function. We can bring voices back in. I know the team will also try and answer your questions as we go along. But now it's my pleasure, so thank you again, Teia. But now it's my great pleasure to introduce the panel that's been assembled to sort of really get into some of the mechanisms. So first, we'll hear from José Pugas, one of the founding partners of IFACC. It was great hearing him speak in Glasgow. José represents JGP Capital, one of the biggest private equity firms in Brazil and Latin America. So maybe you can give us some thoughts there. Then we're going to turn to Leandro Serau, who's the CFO for Syngenta in Brazil. And I think, again, really important that we're hearing from the finance chief, not just the sustainability lead, but actually what's this mean for Syngenta from a finance perspective? So that's going to be a terrific perspective we hear from Leandro. Then we will turn to Sheilla Albuquerque from Agrogalaxy. We'll get her to introduce Agrogalaxy as a company, but there she's the VP of business, and I think an incredibly important company, the largest ag retail company, so providing all the services that farmers need, and again how Agrogalaxy is looking at this opportunity and looking at a mechanism or an initiative like IFACC, how it can really help catalyze the change that we need to see. But perhaps you can also talk about the sort of the business as usual, the pressures the farmers are under, the producers are under, and all the products you're supplying there. And then lastly, we're going to go right to the other end of the supply chain, to the retail end, and to Stephen Ripley, who it doesn't actually say it on the slide, but Stephen is the group responsible sourcing manager for Tesco, one of the largest retailers in Europe and the largest food retailer in the UK, and lots of experience working in this sector, and Tesco doing some very innovative things to look at how it can support the incentivization of producers. And so I know there'll be some interesting perspectives that Stephen brings as well. So the idea is we're going to run through each of the speakers. We're going to take a first set of comments from all of you, then we'll come back and do another round of questions, which I hope will be informed from the audience asking their questions as well. So encouraging the audience here to post your questions into the Q&A function. But Pugas, delighted to turn to you first and tell us what is JGP doing and why are you so excited about this initiative?
Well, Justin, wonderful to talk with you and talk to you all about IFACC. IFACC is one of our favorite alliances and programs, mostly because it's dedicated to something that we are very keen of, is that financial innovation. We are an asset manager, so we are dealing with credit, we are dealing with public equities, we are everywhere on the financial chain. So for us, it's extremely important to have a systemic and innovative perspective on the role of the finance on the agriculture sector, on the food sector, and on the sustainability, for sure. On that, on our mind, we are creating many different financial innovations mechanisms, different financial mechanisms here at JGP, focus on our different mandates. Some of them are credit, as was brilliantly spoken by Teia, is that credit is essential to promote transformation on the beef sector and on soy sector and any sector agriculture at all. If you do not have a credit push demanding some strong ESG KPIs, we are not going to have any success when we are discussing the transformation to transition from a traditional management model at our farms to a most innovative in green compliance in which we are demanding for the producers to have. And we are also with a very strong public equity efforts to engage listed companies to be actively promoting sustainable supply chains and promoting differentiated price and conditions for their suppliers that are engaged on better ESG standards. So I think that as an asset manager, we have a responsibility to create those new financial mechanisms because we are talking about the new rules of the game. Old financial mechanisms, they do not work anymore. So it's our responsibility and duty to promote and to create those new financial mechanisms that can dialogue between the new ways of doing things, the new correct ways of producing with the needs of the economic agents that have been engaged on the production for the last century or more, such as Teia and many others. So we do not have to push our way to invest on the producers, but have to understand the way that they produce, what are the needs of the producers, and how we can promote them to a new standard of green production. That's our way of doing. That's what we are planning. There are many good things happening. We are in quiet period in many of our products, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be speaking a lot about the new products that we are developing. But what we can say by JGP is that we are finding working with companies such as Agrogalaxy, working with producers such as Teia, and working with NGOs and civil society, is that the financial sector is now have to be serving the society and creating those new mechanisms. And IFACC, in my opinion, is one of the best frameworks and taxonomies to be implemented because it really can make the translation between all those sectors, creating a new ecosystem of financial products. So, Justin.
Thank you. So I just want to try and summarize some of that and also push you. I suspect you can't answer more, but you talked about the sort of products that are provided to farmers and extending credit, right? Which in lots of cases is loans, right? That support so much of agricultural development. And so how are those loans get sort of, how do we make those loans contingent on environmental outcomes as well as simply just lending the money and ensuring that the loan is repaid? You also talked about engaging companies through public equity, and so listed companies that have to answer to shareholders, and we're seeing more and more of that action. We saw 33 major asset managers come together in Glasgow, and I think many more will. I'm delighted that the company I've just joined, Generation, is one of those signatories, really starting to engage on the public equity side around the importance of the deforestation agenda. But in terms of what you really talked about is listening listening to what the farmers lead, listening to the various different stakeholders that sit around the table that are going to be necessary to drive the transition. You talked, and there I think the importance of collective action, which we also heard Teia talk about, I think is so central to this. Nobody can do it on their own. But I also got the sense you're working on some very innovative things, but you're not quite ready to tell us what they are. So, but is that the right summary of how JGP is engaging in this space?
Yes, for sure. And about innovations that we can't talk about without discussing any specific financial product. When we're talking about credit adjusting, and we talk how credit can provide the correct conditions for a producer to be engaging on a greener management on the farm, it constitutes of longer term, not only amortization periods, but also we're talking about grace periods. For example, if you have a producer that have a livestock rancher, a cattle rancher that is connected, whose land is constituted of a large portion of degraded pasture. A degraded pasture to be productive again on a low carbon agriculture, it demands at least 3 years. So we can't provide loans of 1 year or one cycle of 6 months if you are demanding for the producers to have a 3-year cycle on the recovery of degraded pastures. So what our innovations on credit sides are based are on longer period, best collaterals, because most of the smallholders, they do not have 2 or 3 or 4 land titles to be introduced as collaterals on loans. So we have to be creative. So we are talking about how we can use the livestock as guarantee on credit operations, how we can use the carbon credits as guarantees on that side, on those sides. And also, finally, how we can recognize this new capital that is generated when you make the transition from a traditional management system farming to a greener one, such as ecosystemic payments, such as carbon credits, and many others. How we can use that as a new cash, a new capital for the producer to amortize, to pay for the installments of the loans. So we have to change the full cycle of capital, and not only about the rules of subscription. That for me is the prerequisite, is not something innovative, but how we can translate the new capital of ecosystemic payment of carbon credits as a way to make as a new perception for the farmer, for the rancher, that sustainability is not just a new restraint of the production, but it's a new way, a new revenue channel, a revenue stream for them to promote the green farming, the low carbon agriculture and livestock ranching. And about the active ownership side, and I know I'm quite short on time. We have to get with the companies, not against the companies. So our strategy here on our active ownership, we are creating a new deforestation free active ownership fund, is to engage unlisted companies and help them to make the transition. So we are pushing them. We are not struggling against them for in order to make the transition. And when you talk about climate change in Brazil, we have to address land use, have to address forestation. So that's our focus, helping those companies to make the transition to a greener future.
That's great. I'm not going to try and summarize all of that because you covered so much, but it's very, very encouraging to hear that. But I think this issue that sustainability is not a constraint, but actually an opportunity. And you touched on payment for ecosystem services and carbon credits, carbon finance. I'm sure that's a theme that will return as well. But I want to turn to you, Leandro, and to the role Syngenta's playing. Why is this in your financial interest? And just let us know a little what you're doing and where you see this going in terms of the scale moving forward.
Okay, hi everyone again. Thank you, Justin. Just a quite short and quick disclaimer. As you might be aware of, but Syngenta is about to launch an IPO in China still this year. That's the plan. So we are in the quiet period. So eventually, some topic or question I won't be allowed to comment, but I hope that won't be the case. Okay. So in general, I do agree with what Pugas just said. Okay, in general terms, but let me bring some real example about what Syngenta is doing that's already happening in the field. Okay, there is an initiative here in Brazil called Reverte. And Reverte is the most relevant, important initiative in the sustainability area within Syngenta worldwide, okay? Basically, it's a joint initiative developed, created by Syngenta PNC, focusing on influencing sustainable expansion of the agriculture in Brazil over degraded pasture lands. It means that currently these lands are producing less than its potential and offering less ecosystem services than possible because of the soil erosion, for example. So we want to foster a sustainable agriculture that delivers benefits to farms, society, and nature. Just to have an idea about the size of this opportunity, pastures represents 21% of the Brazilian territory. 50% out of this area, around 90 million hectares, estimated to present some level of degradation, kind of degradation. 24 million hectares are located in Cerrado region, Mato Grosso mainly. Considering, in our view, the transport, agricultural infrastructure, we believe that 5 million hectares are ready to be converted to soybean production, for example. So Reverte is committed to restore 1 million hectares, degraded pasture lands, into productive lands by the end of 2026. So it's a big ambition, but couldn't be different in a way to really touch and create a positive, relevant impact on the environment. So how farmers join Reverte? In order to have access to the agriculture inputs and all agronomics guidance, farmers must ensure that their area is in compliance with the program's environment and protocols and get the financing approval by the involved banking entities. TNC has a role to engage with partners and several stakeholders to support good governance and conditions, also ensure the incorporation of environment criteria and protocols, and bring ideas about degraded soils, recovering best agriculture practice. And also in the finance side, we've been talking to Greg, and we are running several discussions about different opportunities to scale up the finance instruments for Reverte, pretty much aligned with the ideas that Pugas just mentioned. So one of the key pillars that secure the success of Reverte is the financing piece, okay? Internally, we used to call financial solutions. So far, we established a partnership with Itaú Bank, where through Reverte program, we provide a 10 years financing, 10 years credit line with 3 years grace period and requires hard collaterals from growers. The most significant investment needs to be made on year one, okay, when grower will work on the soil correction with a lot of fertilizers, adopt the right seeds varieties, start using Reverte protocol and agronomic practice. The optimal yield potential for that production environment is reached after 3 or 4 years on average. That's why we need the 3 years grace period. It must be a long-term financing line, in this case, 10 years. So far we run a pilot. We ended 2021 with 31,000 hectares, okay, implemented within this Reverte program through 8 customers, and $45 million financing was released by Itaú already. So we were very happy. We are very happy about the success of this pilot. There has been a great experience so far. The feedbacks coming from growers in Itaú are very positive, especially in the grower side. They are not finding this kind of long-term financing available in the market, okay, even if they need to provide hard collaterals. But this is a more traditional way of offering credit, analyzing customer by customer based on the historical relationship between banks and growers and the bank, requesting hard collaterals, etc. So far it was good, 31,000 hectares. But when you look at the size of our ambition, the 1 million hectares in 5 years, we do need to bring capital markets to the game. As Pugas mentioned, we need the support of the assets, the financial investors, the capital market players, in order to create these mechanisms, these new instruments to finance in a more scalable and sustainable way, all this ambition and opportunity we have in Brazil. Okay. So, and also just a final comment, I stop there in order to keep the conversation. I do believe in the blended finance instrument. So we need to bring the concessional investors to this discussion as well. So we need to combine, harmonize the interests of the industry, the traditional financial market, and concessional investors in order to succeed in this opportunity we have.
Very good. Thank you, Leandro. So I think you perfectly brought to life the idea of the sort of the credit provision that we heard from Pugas, which is, you talked about a 10-year loan with a 3-year grace period, so critical for the farmer. You talked about the initial disbursement you've got and the 31,000 hectares of land that's already sort of embracing that. I mean, one of the good things is that you saw $133 trillion of capital in Glasgow committing to go on a journey to net zero. My sense is, particularly as I now move into this finance world and into a big asset manager myself, people just don't know what the mechanism is or where and how they can actually deploy that type of money. And then you talked about blending instruments, and I wonder if you might just say, what's the role of the concessionary capital? What type of role do you think that needs to play, and how is that going to accelerate the uptake to get to this sort of big goal you've got of 1 million hectares for Reverche?
So basically, there are two main roles. The first one is to really put money within the financing, really invest with us in the finance instrument. And if you think about securitization programs, it is to bring concessional investors in the junior tranche or the mezzanine by taking the first and second losses with Syngenta. It's important to emphasize Syngenta is really committed to be part of this first and second losses in the structure of securitization program, and also by ensuring the ESG protocols, right, in order to really engage growers to be able to be open actually to adopt these ESG protocols with and together TNC as well, which is our main partner with Reverche.
Very good. So, but I just want to probe one more on that, because the concessionary capital, we need that because there's not commercial returns with this. And does that include any of these payment for ecosystem services that Pugas talked about? Where I get the value concessionary can bring on the ESG dimensions that you talked about, but in terms of reducing the cost of money, is that what's really needed, because it's difficult to make this commercial?
Yeah, there's one of the biggest challenges. I think that the biggest challenge we have within the structure is the first one, the interest rate, in order to be positive or to bring the attractiveness for the growers. So by having the concessional investors, we can reduce the interest rates of the financing for the growers. And also, again, regarding the long-term financing, the 10 years financing within this kind of instrument is nothing usual in our market. It's more common 3 years, 4 years financing the securitization programs. So 10 years financing, we do need investors committed to a long-term view. That's another important role of the concessional investors.
Very good. Well, much more I'd love to ask, but we are going to move to Sheilla to hear her perspective. And as I mentioned, Agrogalaxy, maybe you could just say a little bit about the formation of Agrogalaxy, who you are. But I think the most interesting question for me is, as a major ag retailer, you have farmers demanding kind of all the things that they need just to produce the food and keep their economics working. Where and how does all of this fit? Where is the sustainability journey for Agrogalaxy, and how do you see an initiative like IFACC? But please introduce the company and then why and how you're thinking about some of this. That would be wonderful.
Great. Obrigada, bom dia, é prazer estar aqui com vocês. Eu vou falar pouquinho do Agrogalaxy. Nós somos uma empresa jovem, recém-listada na Bolsa no ano passado. Pertencemos majoritariamente a fundo de private equity, o Aqua Capital. trabalhando numa tese de transformação do setor de varejo agrícola no Brasil e de consolidação do setor. É um setor que tem mais de 5.000 revendas, né? E desde 2016, com a aquisição da primeira empresa, que foi a Rural Brasil, nós trabalhamos em adquirir e depois crescer organicamente essas empresas. Então, para dar uma dimensão, hoje nós estamos presentes praticamente em toda a área agricultável do Brasil, faltam alguns cantos ainda que a gente está trabalhando nisso para preencher ou com aquisição orgânica com a M&A, mas nós cobrimos hoje 14 milhões de hectares no país, onde nós temos presença física através das nossas 145 lojas de insumos, serviços e serviços financeiros também, com quase 600 agrônomos a campo. Então, o que eu digo, Justin, é que nós temos o poder da escala, e eu vejo que muitas dessas soluções, assim como o Leandro estava falando do desafio de 1 milhão de hectares, é a questão de quem chega no agricultor e consegue levar essa informação de forma que ele consiga discernir. Então, o Agrogalaxy faz esse papel, nós estamos aí nesse lugar privilegiado da cadeia, que é o varejo, nós chegamos efetivamente no agricultor. Eu costumo fazer uma conta, Justin, que com os nossos 600, quase 600 agrônomos, nós temos uma base de clientes transacionais anualmente, que nós vendemos, né, fazemos negócio com 25.000 produtores, pequenos e médios. Nós estamos lá nos pequenos e médios, onde a gente consegue fazer essa transformação, ajudar o ecossistema, porque ninguém faz nada sozinho, a realmente fazer essa transformação da sustentabilidade. Eu costumo fazer uma conta, se hoje a gente dá uma orientação para os nossos 600 agrônomos, para levar uma conversa de qualquer transformação, um protocolo, um novo produto, um novo financiamento, eu consigo ter uma conversa de qualidade na sala ou na mesa do agricultor de 2 horas. Em 20 dias eu consigo conversar com 25.000 agricultores pessoalmente por 2 horas. Tecnicamente, porque nós todos são formados em agronomia, estão acostumados, eles conhecem muitas vezes mais a lavoura do agricultor do que o próprio agricultor, com a permissão do agricultor, que rely on them, né, que confiam nele, os seus protocolos técnicos, os seus manejos, qual produto utilizar. Então, hoje o Agrogalaxy tem essa presença de 14 milhões, em 14 milhões de hectares, crescentes, com pessoas. Eu digo que a nossa beleza é que essas 600 pessoas já são viáveis financeiramente. Eu vejo o Brasil frutífero em startups no agro, a gente tem mais de 2.000 startups no agro, mas vai ser muito difícil criar a escala para levar isso para o pequeno e o médio agricultor. Então, é aí onde a gente se coloca. E já fazendo essa conexão com a IFACC, eu concordo plenamente com o Pugas e o Leandro, a gente precisa realmente fomentar essa transição. Ela vai acontecer, só que a velocidade em que ela vai acontecer, na minha opinião, vai depender dos mecanismos financeiros que a gente tem para incentivar. E o Brasil, vocês todos estão vendo aí a nossa taxa Selic, né, a taxa de juros interna do país. Então, qualquer financiamento que não seja ali, que realmente se pague em um ano com aquela safra, né, em menos de um ano, que é uma soja, uma safrinha, é muito difícil do agricultor acomodar dentro do seu custo. Então, às vezes a gente não precisa, não é zero tax, mas se a gente consegue esticar um prazo, por exemplo, nesse caso de recomposição de solo, primeiro, eu acredito que o setor financeiro, nós temos que olhar o solo como um fixed asset. É um ativo fixo, né? Ele não vai tirar o solo do lugar. E toda essa questão, inclusive, de retenção de carbono, ela está no solo muito fortemente, né? Tem eu acredito piamente que a gente vai conseguir chegar num protocolo, por exemplo, para deixar a soja positiva em carbono. Ela sequestrar mais do que emitir, né? Eu acho que é possível isso. Já pensou se a gente consegue fazer isso em 40 milhões de hectares? Já o Brasil está com 50 milhões de hectares de soja, sendo um grande sequestrador, né, de carbono. Então, voltando, temos o poder da escala e eu acredito que o financiamento pode nos ajudar a acelerar tanto a questão da preservação. Eu falo, um pé de soja não pode valer mais que uma árvore na Amazônia. né? Não pode, a gente tem que consertar isso, tem que ter um mecanismo onde a gente realmente consiga valorizar mais aquela árvore centenária do que aquele pé de soja, né? Nós estamos falando um pouquinho do que o Agrogalaxy está fazendo, inclusive em parceria com a JGP. Eu também não posso abrir em detalhes, nós estamos no quiet period desse instrumento, né, Pugas? Mas nós estamos criando um guarda-chuva de soluções financeiras, assim, para abarcar esses diferentes protocolos. O que eu consigo fazer como Agrogalaxy? Primeiro, eu tenho centros de testes em regiões importantes do país, porque também o que às vezes funciona no sul do Brasil não funciona no norte. Eu tenho uma boa cobertura na Amazônia, no bioma amazônico e no Cerrado, mas eu também tenho Mata Atlântica, a gente também tem o bioma do Nordeste, que precisam também ser protegidos, né? Mas, enfim, a gente tem centros de tecnologia onde a gente consegue testar protocolos. Normalmente, a indústria vai testar os seus próprios produtos. Eu consigo testar a combinação de todos os produtos da indústria e ver que protocolo é mais interessante do ponto de vista de produtividade e sustentabilidade. É muito importante que a gente aumente a produtividade, porque aumentando a produtividade, a gente reduz a necessidade de abertura de área. Então, eu consigo testar protocolos, consigo desenvolver novos protocolos, levar esse protocolo tecnicamente até o agricultor e financiar. Então, o que eu digo para o IFACC? Estamos à disposição para criar mecanismos de sustentabilidade, protocolos sustentáveis e esperamos captar o paciente para que a gente realmente consiga fazer a transformação do Brasil. Eu acredito, o Brasil é a maior potência agroambiental do mundo. Nós precisamos reverter essa nossa má fama, né? E que é muito devido ao desmatamento. Não tem desculpa, nós não podemos desmatar a Amazônia, né? Nós precisamos proteger nossos biomas, o cerrado, e dá para fazer isso só convertendo área degradada de pastagem e aumentando a produtividade nas áreas que já estão produtivas hoje.
Wonderful. I think, I mean, it's a very, very important, powerful vision in terms of Brazil's positioning in the global market. It's a conversation that we've had with the Agriculture Ministry when I was at TFA many times in terms of not just projecting Brazil as an agriculture superpower and a breadbasket for the world, which is clearly so important today, but also this environmental superpower. And it's really balancing these two. That's the opportunity that you're all talking to. And I think this, the reach that you have and the vision, I think, of bringing all of these retailers together, I think is a really extraordinary platform that you have with Agrogalaxy. So it's really encouraging to hear of your interest and your leaning into this. I had just one quick follow-on for you. I mean, obviously finance plays such an important role. Everybody is saying that, but where do you see the majority of Brazilian farmers today in terms of what they're asking across all of your outlets, be it in the north or the south or the northeast, but what is the interest of the farmers for this transition, for this great vision that you just painted?
Primeiro, eles entendem, uma boa parte deles, não todos, entendem que o mundo está caminhando para isso, e o Brasil precisa continuar inserido, né? Most of the soybean é exportada, né? Principalmente soja e milho, se não é exportada in natura, é exportada em frango. Então, nós precisamos fazer a lição de casa. Então, muitos agricultores já entenderam o recado, né? Com a Europa, falando aí de 2020, desmatamento zero. Os pequenos ainda não entenderam, então a gente também tem uma tarefa de levar essa informação para eles, né? Então, acredito que, assim, é um tema de mercado, mas também, Justin, o agricultor, ele quer fazer o que é certo, a maioria quer fazer o certo. A gente só precisa fazer essa informação chegar até lá e criar os mecanismos para que isso aconteça. Eu venho da indústria, assim como o Leandro, fui muitos anos Corteva, e eu me surpreendi quando eu vim para o varejo, porque o agricultor, por exemplo, ele quer usar mais bioinsumos. Ele entende que usar mais bioinsumos, principalmente o pequeno, porque normalmente o pequeno é ele mesmo que aplica, ou é o filho dele, ou é alguém da família dele. Ele quer usar produtos com perfil toxicológico menor, melhor para ele, para a família. o maior patrimônio do agricultor é o solo. Ele quer proteger o solo, ele quer manter aquele solo sustentável, produtivo para os seus filhos, para os seus netos. Então, assim, o agricultor, a maioria esmagadora, entende a necessidade que ele tem de preservar, de valorizar aquela terra que ele tem, e ele sabe que ele vai fazer isso mantendo aquela terra produtiva. Ele consegue enxergar. Então, o que ele demanda, eu acho, é o seguinte: obviamente, ele demanda que o que a gente traga para ele mantenha ou aumente a sua produção sem aumentar seus custos. Por isso é que eu acho que os mecanismos financeiros têm que funcionar principalmente para proteger as florestas.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you so much, Sheilla, and for all you're doing. I want to now turn to Stephen and get a perspective from a retailer right at the other end of the supply chain. And Tesco has been very, very active on soy. There's a particular mechanism that you're supporting, the RCF. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about that. But Stephen, great to have you with us. Maybe start just with sort of what Tesco is doing, and then where and how you see innovative finance and something like the RCF fitting in.
Sure, thanks, Justin. So Tesco has been on this journey to try and advance the sustainable soy agenda for quite a number of years now. Why are we on this journey? It's a good question. Why is a big UK retailer so concerned about soy grown in the Amazon? Well, the simple question is, it's our largest environmental footprint. Sorry, the simple answer. And we use around 500,000 tons of soy to produce the products that we sell in our supermarkets, primarily in the UK, every year. So that's essentially all animal products that we sell in the UK, and the vast majority of soy is used to feed those animals. And therefore, you know, it is a major concern of ours, and it's our number one environmental footprint. So what have we been doing about it? Well, over the years, we've tried various initiatives. More recently, in 2019, we were very engaged with Abiovi, as I'm sure multiple people on this call are aware, in trying to drive a kind of industry agreement to protect the Cerrado. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, that didn't come about. So since then, we've really been reevaluating the strategy somewhat. And today we really focus on three pillars. So the first of these is the Soy Manifesto. Now the UK Soy Manifesto, hopefully some of you have heard of it, but essentially it's a plan or a manifesto to say that we only want deforestation conversion-free soy in the UK. And it's now supported by all the major retailers in the UK, major food service companies, major manufacturers, and the major suppliers to those companies. In fact, we estimate that now we're representing more than 60% of soy used in the UK in that manifesto. So that's creating a plan, an agenda for moving to verified deforestation conversion-free soy by 2025, in line with our big overarching public commitment. The second prong of our work on sustainable soy is really about working with our suppliers. So we work very closely with our suppliers, as one would imagine, but particularly in this agenda, we're engaging very closely in terms of coordinating the industry move, because no company, not Tesco, not Walmart, not Unilever or Nestle or any company of any size can achieve this objective alone. The only way we can get there is by coordinating our approach and working together. And that indeed includes the traders in Brazil, it includes the farmers in Brazil. So we work very closely with our suppliers to coordinate and produce these kind of roadmaps up to 2025, what we're hoping to achieve, the pathways to get there, how we're going to realize a sustainable soy sector. And then the third prong of our strategy is the responsible commodities facility, as Justin says. And this is really a very kind of direct mechanism, which looks to provide cheap business finance to farmers, relatively low cost business finance to farmers who agree to not deforest, so to grow soy without deforestation, without conversion, and on that basis they will qualify for loans which sorry on the basis of committing to no deforestation, no conversion, and agreeing to be monitored on that basis, they will qualify for these low interest loans. So with this mechanism, we're looking to go right back to the origin of the soy supply chain to incentivize sustainable production at the individual farm level. And it's very much our hope and ambition that these agendas kind of coalesce and that we realize a sustainable soy sector, hopefully ahead of 2025, but 2025 is our major target.
Very good. So, I mean, I think one thing I just sort of highlight from the beginning, I think you talk very well to the concern that exists in Europe and other markets around deforestation and how that's translated into action from supply chain companies. But then the evolution of your journey, which oftentimes we've seen the sort of divide between Europe and Brazil and Europe and South America, actually coming up and supporting mechanisms that support farmers seems to be a great way of building bridges that are so important if we're going to see collective action on this. And I just want to sort of see if that's your experience and what you're seeing as you become more involved in an innovative mechanism, whether it's RCF or some of the other things you've explored.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, we really we don't want to lay all the responsibility of tackling the climate crisis, tackling the deforestation crisis. It can't all be placed on the shoulders of individual Brazilian farmers, no matter how broad their shoulders may be. It's too much of a responsibility for any person, as I say. So we're very keen to really demonstrate the willingness and the commitment of end-of-chain retailers such as ourselves, end-of-chain users of soy, to support the on-the-ground production of soy. And beyond our investments, we intend and very much hope that this initiative triggers a much broader movement in terms of facilitating the investment of institutional investors in a financial mechanism which may not be providing interest rates, the highest interest returns on the market, but nevertheless are fulfilling a very important role in terms of impact investment, in terms of meeting that green segment of investors' portfolios, and directly supporting sustainable commodity production, which is, let's face it, critical for the future of the planet.
Very good. Thank you. So really rich set of perspectives from all the panelists. We have 15 minutes left. This is a 75-minute session, so I hope everybody can stay with us. And we're just going to do one final round of questions to each of the panelists. We've got some really terrific questions come up, and I know many of them have been answered. But thank you all to everybody in the audience for creating such a rich dialogue. But there's a question, I'll start with you, Stephen, and actually work backwards. Just if you could say a little bit more about the structure of the RCF and how, and well, if it's getting money to farmers today, is that where we are? So just short answers now, just as we move into a wrap up.
Yes, thanks, Justin. Very shortly, we will be putting money literally in the hands of farmers, as it were. So we will be, the RCF will be making loans to farmers. We're still finalising the shortlist of farmers who are going to be involved, but essentially the investors led by Tesco and including other retailers in the UK are all lined up. The contracts are pretty much wrapped up, and we're ready to go. We're hoping for a launch in perhaps in summertime, maybe in July. And yeah, we'll certainly keep this group abreast of our progress. But yeah, very exciting time. Money in the hands of farmers directly to stop unsustainable soy production. So it's a very exciting time.
Terrific. So thank you for that. So I want to go back actually to Teia, where we started, and you've heard several of these mechanisms, these loan mechanisms. Are these attractive to farmers, to producers? And there's also a question around the compensation mechanisms for things like carbon, but also legal reserve surplus. Are these the type of things that are going to create more excitement in the producer community?
Bom, para nós, eu estava assistindo, né, e ouvindo algumas coisas, nada sobrepõe as nossas leis ambientais nacionais, que são as melhores do mundo, sem sombra de dúvida. Então, quando a gente fala em desmatamento, nós procuramos sempre encaixar a palavra ilegal. Eu tenho um ativo ambiental na minha propriedade, e, com certeza, se eu for remunerada pelo que aquilo pode vir a me fazer, a me permitir produzir, óbvio que eu não quero desmatar, eu não tenho interesse nenhum nisso. Então, assim, hoje a gente tem o Conserve, que já vem pagando alguma coisa por esses ativos ambientais, e é de sumo interesse do produtor rural. Porque talvez com essa remuneração a gente consiga desviá-la para a própria propriedade. Então, eu recebendo esse valor financeiro, eu consigo, nas áreas que eu já tenho abertas, intensificá-las, com rotacionados, com adubo, com calcário, que são produtos caros hoje. Para um produtor rural como eu, que, confesso, eu não sou grande produtora, eu sou uma média produtora, e que realmente eu preciso desse aporte, dessa ajuda, para que eu possa intensificar mais ainda. Onde eu estou, a gente considera aí entre uma unidade animal, que seria 450 quilos por animal, né, por hectare. Então, eu quero chegar a 3. Para eu fazer isso, eu tenho que ter uma área intensificada, né? Então, em vez de eu ter isso ao longo da minha propriedade, eu faria em menos terra, desde que eu tivesse a remuneração por essa parte que eu estou conservando e que está ficando fechada. Não dizendo que eu estou falando por 100% dos produtores, né? Eu estou falando por uma grande parcela, isso eu tenho certeza, que preferem intensificar na área que já está aberta e do que desmatar, né? E outra coisa também, fica aqui uma dica, se puder, que também a gente possa ter um aporte financeiro para comprar propriedades rurais que estejam devastadas, que estejam precisando recuperar, né? Então, se a gente tiver essa condição, com certeza eu mesma gostaria de comprar meu vizinho lá, que está degradado, que está horrível, e para poder intensificar a área dele também, sem precisar de novas áreas, abrindo novas áreas.
Teia, it's wonderful having your voice here. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm going to turn that straight to a large asset manager who's also on the call around, what do you say, Pugas? Can we create mechanisms for buying land as well, and helping people like Teia to restore the land?
It's totally possible, Justin. Of course, it's a question of priorities now, but it's totally possible. I think that we have a lot of degraded pastures in Brazil that we have to restore, we have to recover. Most of them are in productive lands, so what we see is a share of productive farmers with degraded pastures. So I think that looking at the priorities that we have, capital is something very finite. We're not talking about infinite capital. Maybe we have to prioritize restoration, credit, and other projects. But for sure, it's possible to create new financial mechanisms to purchase new lands. But Justin, what we have to face is that in Brazil, the problem is not just about the expensive capital. It's much more about the shortage of patient capital. So when we are addressing the need of the profile of capital necessary to purchase land, we are talking with even more patient capital. We have to it's less scalable, but much more intensive, and longer fuel capital. So it's not an easy equation to be solved, but I think that's a necessary equation to be solved, Justin. So what we are facing now is that we are trying to create good businesses, but there are essential business that must be done, and we have the obligation to make them good businesses. I think that's the challenge that we have to overcome now.
Very good. Thank you. That's an excellent response. I had one other question, just a quick one for you. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, how many small farmers are you looking to try and target? And the specific question was around carbon credits. But I mean, what's the, we've heard, you know, the numbers that others have talked about in terms of the reach. What do you hope to be doing in terms of number of farmers that you're going to be reaching as you launch some of these products?
Well, in our case, we are always looking for scalable projects. So that's why we are always talking to retailers, to input distributors, input providers, to supply chains, and so on. It's impossible to address individual farmers. They must be connected somehow to a higher organism, such as a supply chain, a cooperative, or any other. When you do that, we can connect a diversity of smallholders that otherwise could not even afford the cost of certification of the carbon credits. So when you're a smallholder, when you're a small farm, there is no, the carbon credit prices do not justify the cost of registration. So you have to be more comprehensive. That's when you talk, for example, Agrogalaxy, we are talking with, as Sheilla has just mentioned, we're talking about 25,000 producers. Most of them are smallholders or mid-sized farmers. When you talk to a cooperative in Brazil, we're talking to 20,000 farmers, smallholders. So when you create a financial mechanisms for those aggregators such as Agrogalaxy, a co-op, a retailer, a Syngenta, we are talking to thousands of farmers, not one or two or three farmers. So we can get the scale just on the start of those financial mechanisms. So our strategy is based on that big numbers, how we can create crowds from pre-established groups, such as supply chains, associations, and so on. So our plan is to achieve the wholeness of our finance producers. So we're talking only in IFACC, more than 2,000 producers to the year 2023 on the Amazon, Cerrado, and Chaco regions. But we are not planning to stop there. We are just on our pilot phase, so expect us to be huge.
Very good and very exciting. Thank you. So, Leandro, let me turn to you. And I mean, lots of questions that are there. Maybe one you could touch on is the sort of the role of chemicals. I think that's been posted in the Q&A, and whether that's an integral part of the sustainability journey that you're on in terms of what Syngenta is doing in Brazil. And then the other piece, I mean, I think it's answered, and you answered it in your original answer, but this role of extending the tenor, the grace periods, obviously that all does cost. And is that exclusively the role of the concessionary capital, or is this also, do you see a big role for carbon finance? Pugas just talked about the need to aggregate that as well, but of course that's what you're doing with all the farmer outreach. So any quick thoughts on those two topics would be great.
Okay, so regarding the first question or comment about the chemical companies and then eventually impacts on the environment. So it's important to say, always want to emphasize this, that Brazil is a tropical country. So the outcome of this weather environment is the necessity to other types of inputs, fungicides, pesticides, herbicides, especially when compared to North America or Europe. So it doesn't mean that we don't have a strong regulation about this. So Brazil has one of the most robust process regarding the regulation and approval for new products or new technologies. It's regulated and approved by Anvisa, IBAMA, and MAPA, and is recognized as one of the most robust process to validate new products. So, and Syngenta follows all local regulators authorities process here. Okay. Regarding the other question, regarding the financing, sorry, could you say again the question, Justin?
Yeah, I think you touched on it, but in providing longer tenor, in providing these grace periods, obviously that is increasing the risk for you as lender. And is that simply going to come from concessionary capital, or is that also, do you see a role for the carbon finance as well with how you're doing that? Okay.
Look, the carbon financing is something that, at least in Revert, is something that we expect to complement, but that's not the key assumption in order to bring the risk management necessity for the sustainability of the project, okay, the initiative. It's something that we want to develop. We want to use Revert areas as a lab to explore the credit of carbon, but it's not the key assumption. The key assumption is the agronomic consultancy we are providing within the Revert program in order to really make this crop productive, right? Even in the level of fertilizers or calcare we need to invest in the first years is huge, but by having the finance, we can really make this area, this crop, predictable and profitable in a shorter term than an usual investment that a grower could do, right? So that's the key assumption we expect in order to really give conditions for the growers, produce and make money, make profitable this area, and as a consequence, pay timely all investors behind the financing structure.
Very good. Thank you very much. So Sheilla, last question to you, if just with 2 minutes, if you could. But there's a question about the strategies for sequestering more carbon or a more climate-friendly soy production in Brazil. So something you hinted at, but what what would you say in terms of an answer there?
Obrigada, Justin. O que eu acredito não, é a ciência, né? Completar essa adoção do plantio direto no Brasil. Eu vi que uma das perguntas tinha a ver com isso, né? O plantio direto é poderoso, fazendo essa cobertura do solo, rotação de culturas, esse manejo com bioinsumos e agroquímicos, como o Leandro falou, moro num país tropical, abençoado por Deus e bonito de natureza. Nós temos um clima que é super, que permite, né, a gente fazer até 2,5 culturas por ano. Então a gente planta soja, segue de milho, algumas áreas algodão e trigo. Então, essa potência, né, ela não é sem custo, ela é seguida de várias necessidades, porque fungo, insetos, erva daninha cresce aqui, né? Então, mas a gente consegue fazer esse manejo com maior uso de bioinsumos aliados aos químicos, que a gente faça isso numa melhor combinação, mas principalmente onde a gente tem que sequestrar carbono na soja? No solo. Isso implica em mudar um pouco a forma como a gente usa os fertilizantes, principalmente, tá? Usar mais organominerais, fertilizantes com maior parte de fontes orgânicas também, liberação lenta, principalmente o nitrogênio, a gente consegue fazer um melhor trabalho, mas concordo com a Teia, isso é caro, a gente precisa ajudar o agricultor a financiar isso, tá? E realmente aplicando as técnicas de conservacionismo que a gente já conhece, né? Plantio direto, rotação de cultura, não só sequência de culturas, mas rotação, cobertura, culturas de cobertura, como braquiária. Então, assim, é possível fazer um trabalho excelente em soja, assim, e, no mínimo, netar essa emissão.
Very good. Thank you so much, Sheilla, for drawing us to a close there. And I want to thank all of the panelists for their rich insight. And I think the sort of what you're laying out in terms of many of the opportunities that are starting to emerge, and it's helpful to remind everyone, IFACC only launched in November, 6 months ago during the Glasgow Climate Conference. The momentum that we're already seeing is really promising. This is complex. People have been looking at this for years. And so I think what IFACC does is it brings people together. It reinforces that need for collective action and the importance of listening to each other as we shape some of these innovative products. Pugas, you've got me so excited about what's coming next that you can't quite talk about, but I'm sure you will be soon. Leandro, the work of Havertz.
I call you later, Justin, don't worry.
My new seat now, I'd be very interested. But no, Havertz and what you're doing there and the vision for Agrogalaxy is terrific. And I know Stephen had to leave, but what Tesco's doing and the retailers, the other members of the value chain leaning in. So really important. So I just want to thank the IFACC team, Danny and Greg and Ivo, the 3 leaders of UNEP, TNC and the TFA. I know they're all available for any of you that have questions on this, questions that have come up. I think there'll be a recording of this available for people to play back. And one really exciting thing is so many of these initiatives that you've heard about are now put together in this knowledge hub. It's a great way of learning about the initiatives, learning about other things that are going on that we haven't had time to talk about. IFACC doesn't just cover Brazil, but also covers Argentina, Paraguay, and the Gran Chaco region, which we've heard less about today, but a critical biome and lots of exciting things there as well. So that link will take you to the Knowledge Hub. And lastly, a thank you to Ashley and Rafa, who I know have done a lot of work behind the scenes to organize the webinar. Hopefully it's been very informative, and I hope lots of you have got a great deal from it. I think we've answered many of the questions, but thank you all for your engagement and making the webinar a huge success as well. And finally, another big thank you to the panelists for sharing your wisdom and insights today. So stay well, and please all keep working together to advance this critical agenda. Thank you.
Bye-bye, thank you.